Did you say scaffolding? Good afternoon, everybody. Today we're talking about scaffolding and fascinating story out of Manhattan, New York City, where there is apparently an issue with how long the scaffolding has been up. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Schenk. I'm the founder and managing broker of Deerwood Realty here in St. Louis, Missouri. We're a small residential, mainly real estate brokerage. And we have our podcast on Apple Podcasts. We put it on YouTube, things like that. If you'd like to support us, you can always click the subscribe button or subscribe on Deezer, Stitcher, those types of places. So let's get into the article today. I think it's fascinating for a bunch of reasons, and we'll go over them. So it says, headline says, it's completely obscene. Scaffolding that's been at the Upper West Side apartment. Oh, it's completely obscene. Scaffolding that's been at Upper West Side apartment for 15 years angers tenants. So, can you imagine living in a building with scaffolding that's been up for 15 years? It says, a group of Upper West Side residents is fighting mad and they don't want to take it anymore. They've been in the dark for 15 years on when the scaffolding in front of their building will come down, and now they're demanding answers. One of the quotes says, the scaffolding has been up for 15 years, which is completely obscene. It goes on to say, when the pedestrian shed was first erected in 2006, tenants at 51 West 86th Street thought that was just life in the big city, a temporary but necessary annoyance while construction work was underway. But 15 years later, the shed is still there, and the scaffolding and netting has been extended all the way up to the top of the 16-story building with little apparent work taking place for 15 years. So, can you imagine? I mean, what's funny about this story is, the scaffolding is a safety device. They call it a sidewalk shed, so you don't, so stuff doesn't fall. And so they've had this up for 15 years, and based on my understanding is, there's no rule against how long you keep scaffolding up. It's just the violations of the building that are the facade that's causing the issue. So. One of the tenants says it blocks sunlight and views our view of the sidewalk, and there's pigeon parade, and you know what that means. So it's a health issue and a safety issue as well. So that's the article. I had some highlights that I put on a different set of notes, and I'll go over those now. What's interesting to me, one of the things is that a quote from the New York City Department of Buildings, it says, sidewalk sheds are a necessity in our city to protect pedestrians from buildings that have been allowed to fall into disrepair. The landlords at 51 West 86th Street have a legal responsibility to keep their building in a safe condition and make needed repairs to the facade. We will continue to take aggressive actions against these landlords to compel them to make the needed repairs of the building. And what's funny is does that have anything to do with the scaffolding that's been out for 15 years? No, it's about how the front of the building is a danger. And what's funny to me is, like, someone is clearly using safety as a weapon. They're like, your building facade is messed up. You have to get it fixed. That's the city. And so the landlord says, okay, well, I'll get it fixed. I'll put up this scaffolding. And then, oh, okay, well, now it's nice you're fixing it, but it's been 15 years. So one of the tenants' quote says, the politicians and the landlords need to step it up because the city is being buried in crumbling scaffolding with no laws that actually protect the rest of us. And so I've not been in New York City in a long time. So it says, so I don't know. So is the scaffolding an epidemic in New York City? And what what in this quote is about this protection of the rest of us? Isn't the scaffolding and sidewalk shed designed for the protection of the rest of us? Is there more here? So it says with no laws that actually protect the rest of us. And the whole point of the sidewalk shed is to protect the people walking underneath it, is my understanding. In the article, it says the last permits, to do the work expired in 2019. We're in 2021, and there's nothing being done. And this is a breakdown of pretty much everything. I mean, this is just a breakdown. This is how things go terribly wrong. And so the city has fined the landlord $108,000 so far for noncompliance with the facade regulations. Okay, so the landlord's being fined to fix a building that they can't or won't fix. And how is that going to work? So you're going to force them to sell the building? And if that's the case, why don't you just go ahead and come out and do that up front? So it sounds like the New York Department of Buildings told the landlord they needed to fix the facade in 2006. The landlord put the scaffolding up to show intent to fix the facade so the city would leave them alone. And now there's apparently no law or code about leaving scaffolding up. The only thing I see here is that from my past experience, scaffolding gets rented. So perhaps they're paying on rent on the scaffolding. But if it's less than the fines, they're better off just leaving it up. And then what's curious about this article is that the tenants are upset by the scaffolding, and that's totally reasonable. I totally understand that. But no one mentions that they are upset about the building facade that apparently needs repairs. What repairs are needed? So what has the city done or said needs to be fixed, or an engineer, anybody, what needs to be fixed on the facade that would take 15 years to fix, or that would cost so much it's not worth doing, so that's why the landlord put this scaffolding up. And so, to me, it would obviously seem that the landlord is at fault here. But what about the maze of city ordinances that somehow allowed this to fall through the cracks? There's no rule for how long scaffolding can be up. So should there be? And so, yeah, that's a fascinating story. It just shows, if you're going to find me for this, I'll fix you. And it's not going to get solved. I mean, the best that they can do is go to the press like the best the tenants can do. They're caught up in this. It's not, clearly they don't want to be in an apartment with scaffolding out for the last 15 years. I mean, that's very depressing. I think it was Joe versus the Volcano. The guy opens up the light's really bad, and then he opens up a window and it's to a wall. I think that's it. I could be wrong. But, I don't understand New York City rent rules or anything like that. I mean, I'm from the Midwest, but it would seem like the best option if you're a tenant is to move. It's not going to get fixed. It's been 15 years. And am I wrong by thinking that? Just move. If you don't, I mean, the building is terrible. Move. I don't know if people feel like they belong in a certain area, or they feel like some sort of cohesiveness with a building, or over a stretch of time, a sentimentality about staying in one place. But just move. I mean, that's at the end of the day, solve your problem. You don't like that the scaffolding's up. Totally reasonable. Your landlord has shown no desire to make the city happy by fixing the facade, and the city has no desire to make you happy by telling them to take the scaffolding down, or having rules in place that are cohesive or coherent, make any sense whatsoever. So just move. Just get that problem out of your life. And I say that as a real estate agent, and I realize I'm biased, but it's time. It's time to just, like, the city and the landlord are having a spat, and the tenants are stuck in the middle. So if you're a tenant, get out. Don't let and I can guarantee you that if all the people move out of the building, something will get done. Something will get fixed. Okay? I mean, if this is a money issue, hit somebody in their wallet. You can't say I'm not going to pay rent, but you certainly don't have to stay there. Unless there's some law that requires you to stay in a building that you don't want to be in, that you hate the facade. So, a very fascinating story. One landlord says, I'm not going to do what the city wants me to do. And the city says, well, you have to. And so they say, okay, well, deal with this now. Tenants are stuck in the middle. It's terrible to use tenants as a bargaining chip, in my opinion. But, I mean, we're going to look out for ourselves, right? That's the way that's the way this is supposed to work now, right? Everybody looks out for themselves. Don't worry about anybody else. So move. I mean that in the nicest way possible. That's what I have for you today. If you like the podcast, it'd be nice for a subscribe. I'd enjoy it. But other than that, I will catch you on the next one.